A Holler FM podcast.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
I'll stop that. I'm like really a nerd. I was like all smiling as the intro was playing.
You know, I was going to say, I was going to ask, does that how the theme goes? No, I'm just playing. You know what's funny is that, so this was very much your show. I feel like I would watch it with you because I'd just be sitting at home, so I would watch it. But it's funny how nostalgia works, because when I heard it, I was like, it was weird. I remember being like, oh yeah, space, the final frontier. And it's different than when you watch like the new Star Trek movies by J.J. Abrams. It's like a different feeling when you revisit something that you grew up with as a kid. Because I just remember being like, yeah, it was like riding a bike after a long time. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. This show, Star Trek: The Next Generation, is near and dear to my heart. So it's set like 100 years after James T. Kirk, the original Star Trek series. So it's set like 100 years later. So Star Trek: The Next Generation takes place in the 24th century, and it follows the escapades of the Enterprise, now under Jean-Luc Picard's captainship. Is that even a word? I think it's a word.
Wait, captainship? Isn't that two words?
I guess. Well, you know, it's under Jean-Luc Picard is now the captain.
There you go. That was it. You got it.
There you go, yeah.
You cleaned that up real good.
Yeah. So Jean-Luc Picard is now the captain of the Enterprise, and so it follows their voyages, meeting new worlds, different people, different cultures. Yeah. So it ran for 7 seasons. 7 seasons.
Which
on syndication.
Well, then it
started in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it started in 1987, and then it aired. The last episode of the TV show aired in 1994, and then they became the movie franchise.
Well, I was gonna say, what's crazy to me about the show is that it started in 87, ended in 94, but was already in syndication in the 90s as it was wrapping up. Is that right? Or did it start syndication after?
I believe it actually started as a syndicated show. So it can be shopped to the network.
Oh, okay. I mean, the thing that was also crazy to me about it was that Patrick Stewart, so his career has like blown up, right? I mean, we know him now as, you know, Professor X, and he has a whole other kind of franchise. And so younger listeners to this podcast may just know him as, oh yeah, that's Professor X. But for the longest time, I knew him as Captain Jean-Luc Picard. And it's crazy how this stuff works, where it's like our dad grew up on Star Trek and he loved Captain James T. Kirk. And then you kind of carried that on and you loved Jean-Luc Picard. I'm going to keep it 100 with people on this podcast. I did not carry on the Star Trek tradition. I will be completely honest. Our household is, you know, a Star Wars. I don't think there has to be a competition between the two, but I just wanted folks to know that no, I have not watched the many iterations of Star Trek other than, you know, sitting with Vanessa and watching Next Generation. But I did get a lot of hate in our family because I was the one person that would watch Star Wars over Star Trek.
No, you got a lot of hate because you were trying to make it be like, oh, Star Wars is so much better than Star Trek.
You know what? We don't get into this on the podcast, but I will say this. As a youth, I may have been strident in my opinions, and I might walk that back. What I will say, and I think this is true as I've watched it, I think what appealed to me, Star Trek is a very logical, science-based show. So everything is kind of comes from like a place of logic and reason, and you map everything out, and there's all this evidence. And I think what appeals to me about Star Wars and why I liked it better is that Star Wars is not necessarily about science and fact as much as it's about intuition and the Force. And there's a lot of spirituality, that whether it's like Buddhism, Christianity, like I just loved that feeling of like we're learning lessons about letting go and about how we can increase who we are in a very spiritual aspect. So that's what I would just say.
Well, and just a quick response. I will say that you're right. Star Trek is more rooted in logic and science, which is what the creator Gene Roddenberry wanted. However, I do feel that for me, Star Trek is more realistic in the sense that it deals with issues that are still happening in today's society. Whereas I always felt like with Star Wars, it kind of felt like very much so a fantasy show or movie. For me, it just felt like fantasy. It didn't really feel real, whereas Star Trek feels real. Like, I feel as if you can watch Star Trek and be like, whatever conflict they get into, somehow you're like, oh, yeah, I can see that happening today. And I always found it interesting how in the show, when they would run up against problems, the last resort would be violence. Which, again, is what Gene Roddenberry wanted. It's like, in today's age, like the first thing we go to is violence. Whereas hopefully, eventually, as we move further into the future, violence becomes like the last resort. And we start using our brains, our logic, our reasoning to solve problems. But anyways, before we get into the show, Chanel.
No. You can't just say all that about Star Trek and then not give me a chance to respond. So how about we do this? Let me just give like a little second thing response in terms of Star Wars. And then, yes, we should move on. I'm fine to move on. Because this is not a podcast where we're debating Star Wars versus Star Trek. But all I was going to say... Go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just... Like, you had your opinion, and I was just, giving my little tidbit. That was it.
I know, but I think that that's one of the things that, so kind of what you brought up about fantasy, I feel like people say that a lot about fantasy. And so I love fantasy, and that goes, it's beyond like Star Wars. Like, I love Harry Potter. I love Lord of the Rings. But I think a lot of those things are based on like real life situations. Like when Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, he was indirectly referencing, World War II. And I just feel like, I don't think that just because the basis is not like a real world situation, I don't think we should discount fantasy and what it can teach us about different ways to resolve. And I think there's a nice element of spirituality that comes into fantasy that I think is also helpful in terms of how we think about conflict and how we process it. So that's all I was going to say, was that I wouldn't suggest discounting fantasy just because it's not rooted in like what we would kind of say as like real world situations. Because some of the stuff with like Star Trek that we could talk about is like, like there's a lot of things around like colonization and imperialism and how do you like move when you're discovering and finding new creatures and things like that. But yeah, so I think that both offer an opportunity to look at what's happening in real time through a different lens. Right? That's all I was saying.
Like I said, I'm not discounting fantasy. I'm just saying for me, when I would watch Star Wars, to me, it just did not feel real. Like it to me, like when I watched the movies, it didn't feel as if it was relatable. That's all I'm saying. Whereas I felt like Star Trek was very relatable. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough.
I'm not discounting anything.
But I agree. I hear you. I think everybody's different, and we are going to be okay with that.
Amen.
I think
so. Chanel, how are you?
Yeah, you're talking about how am I doing?
Yes,
I'm doing good. I was gonna say, we bought into the hype. We got Disney Plus. I know, huh?
Did you see Lady and the Tramp?
I haven't seen it yet, so I watched. See, it's funny that we're talking about Star Wars because they have the new show called The Mandalorian. Anyways, I thought it was funny because so we watched The Mandalorian, and then we've watched WALL-E, but they have like the whole Disney vault on Disney Plus. So I think that in and of itself has just been kind of like, well, it's like every Disney movie you could think of is at your fingertips, except one of the ones that I wanted to watch, which was it Song of the South? I've been trying to watch that movie for like 20 years. Oh,
it's banned.
It's completely banned, so that is not in the Disney vault.
No, and actually, it's out of print, so I don't even know if they own the master still. Like, I don't know. They probably destroyed, maybe. But you know what? To be honest, I know we're getting off topic, but since you brought up Song of the South, okay, I feel like we saw it as kids.
I think so too.
I honestly don't remember the racial context of that movie. And again, when I say we were kids, I feel like we were like 5 or 6, so we probably did not even have a concept of race. But I was like, was it that bad? I've been wanting to see that again too, because like I tell everybody, I was like, the only thing I remember in that movie is the black man in the cabin with the 2 little white kids and the little black boy, and he was telling them the story of Bear Rabbit, and then it goes to the cartoon of Bear Rabbit. That's the only thing I remember.
This is exactly why I wanted to watch it, because I have the same memory of us watching it as a kids. And like you said, we were little, like we weren't big kids. But yeah, like I remember like, oh, it's and I can find some of it on YouTube. So I found that part that I remember, but I can't see the whole damn movie. So anyways, but Felix has oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, with Song of the South, the only thing you will find is the zippity-doo-dah.
Which also bummed me out because I told you about when we were at Disneyland and we were going to ride Splash Mountain because it was finally not broken and open, which is, I mean, for those of y'all from California, Disneyland, y'all know how it is with like Space Mountain and Splash Mountain. That should be like, oh man, it's broken, whatever, right? And it's been around for a long time. So I was like, oh, look, it's open. We should go ride it. And then, I was like, you know what, though? We should listen to your brother, Nick, and we should ride the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, I like that ride.
Girl, that ride was whack. I was mad. I was like, I should have just gone on Splash Mountain. But anyways, bringing it all back, Felix really likes Disney Plus because you can watch pretty much any Disney movie ever. I would say for me, I feel like outside of having the entire Disney catalog, there hasn't been enough content to keep me engaged. Like, you know what I mean? Like I feel like once I watch the movies that I would want to watch, I don't know if I would keep the monthly subscription for $6.99. Whereas with like Netflix or, other streaming services, there's more content. So I think we're going to keep Disney Plus for now, but I don't know if everybody else should buy into the hype.
Yeah, I kind of, I saw an advertisement for Disney Plus, and I kind of have the feeling that it's more geared for either you're a fanatic for Disney or, children.
Which also reminds me, this is the first time that we are recording in the daytime. So we have, on my end, we have 2 little kids who are wide awake. So if you hear a or anything else, that's the children. How are you doing, Vanessa?
Girl, I wish I could clone myself.
Do it, girl. Clone
but
yourself.
I probably wouldn't have time to do the surgery. I feel like it's been nonstop stop. I am so looking forward to Thanksgiving break. Even though we do have homework assignment over Thanksgiving break, side-eye real quick, I'm still looking forward to just being able to relax, lie in bed, sleep in, watch TV, not feel like, oh my gosh, I need to get X, Y, and Z done like right now because it's due tomorrow. Oh, child, I'm going to say this right now. I was thinking about going for a master's, but no, this is going to be it.
Right?
Once I get this BS in, I'm done. The hospital is going to have to pay me to go to school.
That is it, though, because I had the same reaction.
Done with school.
I feel you. Sorry. I feel you.
Yes. But, still, nursing school is rewarding. Still rewarding. Learning new concepts. Like I told you, right now I'm taking nutrition and maternal health, newborn. So we're learning about pregnancy, birth, labor, complications. I take my hat off to all the mothers who have given birth vaginally, C-section. Oh, y'all, hand clap right there. What you guys got to go through, ooh, child. I take my hat off to you guys, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely after Fox, if I get pregnant again, I don't know how it's going. I just, I don't know how it's going to happen. Because it's like you said, it's a lot. It is, the pregnancy's a lot. To me, no matter how you deliver, it is a lot. And then the recovery, again, no matter how you have delivered, is a lot. Like whether you did it vaginally, it's no easy. I mean, there are some things that are definitely going to be easier than if you had a cesarean. But girl, I remember, and you probably have learned this about after I had Fox, I guess I had so much fluid retention that I was straight up, like in the middle of the night, have to run to the bathroom and pee like crazy. And
yes,
I called
we
the
learned
nurse.
about that.
Yeah, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it's okay. It's just all the fluid retention coming out." And I was like, "Wow."
Yeah. Diuresis.
Girl,
gotta love it.
Doesn't that mean that? Don't you feel like if girls like knew that from the jump, like we would all probably be better about birth control? I feel like, I wasn't bad at it, but mom and dad, sorry if you got to hear it, but I wasn't always great at it either. But I feel like knowing what I know now, I'm like, I would be like 100% champ at birth control. That's all I'm saying.
Well, so we had a lab, and our teacher has set up multiple stations in which we got to deal with different aspects of pregnancy. And so one of the stations mimicked contractions. So what we had to do is there was a basin full of ice water, and we had to stick our hand in the ice water, keep it there for a minute, then pull it out, repeat 2 more times. Then that would stimulate contractions. Granted, it's not like contractions, but, just to stimulate it. Girl, I kid you not. Because I was thinking, just put my hands in some ice water, that's fine. Girl, I kid you not. The second time, I was like, I can't do this. My hand was hurting. I was seriously like, I don't want to do this. I cannot do this. My partner, she was like, Vanessa, you just got one more time. Just go one more time. I was like, girl, I cannot. It is pain. I'm like, if this is contractions, I don't want it. And then another girl was like, just imagine that being a baby coming out of your vagina. I was like, girl, I know. I was like, if they want to teach young girls about this is what can happen if you have unprotected sex, do this here basin of ice water. It was pain. So the third time you had to put your hand in, girl, I was holding my partner's hand. She was doing this method of like distraction. The only way I got through it is that she started talking about my other favorite topic besides Star Trek, which is cruises. Everybody knows I love going on cruises. That's how,
you do.
Yes,
you do.
That's how I managed to get through that final minute was her asking me about cruises. Oh my goodness. And then afterwards I was like, oh my head. Oh, it hurt so bad. I was like, nah, you know what? Sorry, Mom and Dad. I don't think children are going to be coming from me. I don't think so. I mean,
yeah.
And that was just ice water. If that was painful for me, I can't. Oh, child, no. They would probably have to make me unconscious, and then I wake up, the baby is just in my arms. I'm like, okay, cool. For me to have a kid. Oh, like I said, I take my hat off to all the mothers out there that had to go through labor or was an active participant in labor, supporting, their surrogate and whatnot. I take my hat off to you guys. I honestly do.
I also think, though, not that I'm trying to push you to have no kids or anything, but I do feel like when it's you, it's a little different. I'm not going to lie, though. No, contractions, I think both times there was never enough time for anybody to come down anyways when I have, my kids. But yeah, I just feel like when it's yours, it's a tiny bit different. That don't mean I'm trying to go through that again, though. Who, Jesus? It's true that what they tell you in the books where it's you have the baby and then honestly, the minute they put him in your arms, the minute they put Fox in my arms, it was it was weird how it wasn't I forgot, but it was it was all worth it. Mm-hmm. That's what's crazy about it, is that it all feels worth it. So I would just point that out, that if you decide to have a baby, I think you would, it would be different, because you'd feel like once that baby was put in your arms, you would just be it would just be worth it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I'll take your word for it. So, shall we dive into Star Trek Next Generation?
Wait, what are you drinking? What are you drinking?
Oh, it's still sipping on that Mondavi. Everybody should know that I'm doing calorie counting because I'm trying to lose some of this excess weight that's on me. So, we found out in the last podcast that red wine has about 180 calories. So, yeah, it's going to last me for quite a bit.
I should tell you right now that Robert is diligently researching your numbers, because he is not convinced that a 4-ounce pour of red wine has 180 calories.
Well, let me know, Robert. If it's less than that, I'll be a happy camper.
I will let you know. So on my end, so I was I finally did a bunch of not a bunch. I'm not going to tell that lie. I did all I did, honestly, was I went to Robert Mondavi's Wikipedia page. Because I was why is he so famous, Robert? And Robert was Chanel. Because you know how Robert is about food and wine.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yeah. And I was and for those who don't know, Robert, by training, is a professional chef and has come from a family that are very, very big food and wine enthusiasts.
Oh, so yes.
They're on some next level shit with that. Anyway, so I was he basically just invented California wines. And I was okay, well, we didn't grow up in the wine tasting world, which we didn't. So whatever. So yeah, I was oh snap. Apparently he did all this techniques and stuff and did invent this whole California wine. And so I was you know what? I'm going to try I have his Cabernet Sauvignon in front of me right now. And I don't generally I don't like reds that much.
Right.
But this is the first red that I've had in a long time, and it's actually really good. So it's really smooth, and it doesn't have a lot of spice to it, which I hate about red wines. I hate spicy red wines. So I would recommend it. I was actually surprised. The next one that I want to try is apparently his signature wine that he created. It's a white wine called Fumé Blanc. I've never had it, but apparently it's his signature. He created this. So that's what I'm going to try next.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's what I'll be sipping on while we're talking about Star Trek. And I am excited to dive in.
Yes, let's dive in. So I already said a quick synopsis. It's set about 100 years after James T. Kirk. Star Trek The Next Generation takes place in the 24th century. It's still the Enterprise ship. However, the captain is now Jean-Luc Picard. And then again, they travel through space and meet new cultures, other worlds. The ship is very diverse, as it usually is in Star Trek. It ran for 7 seasons, started in 1987, ended in 1994. The Next Generation became the movie franchise after the original series. So they had Star Trek Generations, Star Trek First Contact, which is my fave. Actually, I think it is a fan favorite all around, Star Trek First Contact. Then it was Star Trek Insurrection, and then Star Trek Nemesis. So, 7-season TV show,
Wow.
4 movies, and CBS is now coming out with Picard, which is a streaming TV show on their app. It's like Picard has retired from being captain. He's on his vineyard, and something like pulls him back. So in the trailer, it does show, spoiler alert, that Riker and Deanna Troi make a guest appearance. So does Data, 7 of 9 from Voyager. So to be honest, I'm hoping that a lot more of the Next Generation cast also makes guest appearance, like Michael Dorn, who played Worf, LeVar Burton, who is Geordi, Gates McFadden, who was Beverly Crusher, the Doctor. Yeah, I would like to see a lot more of the Next Generation cast making a guest appearance on Picard. That's supposed to come out, I want to say it's like January of 2020. So yeah. So there's a quick synopsis. Oh, I would also like to see.
Go ahead.
So Whoopi Goldberg was also a recurring character on The Next Generation. She played Guinan, the bartender in 10 Forward, and also gave great advice, wise beyond her years. I would like to see her also in Picard. I would love that. I always thought that I wish she was like a main character, but of course, she was probably off, doing her movies and stand up. But I always thought she was such, she melded with the cast. It was like, you felt like she was there from the beginning. So I would like for her to do a guest appearance. So Whoopi, if you're listening, can you please make a guest appearance on Picard? Thank you. Okay.
I was just going to chime in real quick and say the Picard one I had heard about. So I had heard that they're going to do the streaming service on it, or the shows. And I think given, having watched, and so we watched 2 episodes, and these episodes are like, what, an hour long?
Yeah.
45 minutes?
45 minutes, and then, plus commercials makes it an hour.
Right. And we watched The Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, which is what in seasons?
Season 3 and 4. So part 1 ended season 3. Part 2 opened up season 4.
Which we also saw Whoopi, and you see the entire cast. And so one of the things that I would say that I felt like I was really impressed by, this to me is one of the first shows that we've rewatched. And like Golden Girls, Living Singles, those are both comedies, 30-minute comedies. Mm-hmm. This is our first kind of to me, substantial drama. And I actually was surprised at how well the storyline, the plot, and the acting hold up.
Yes. Star Trek, The Next Generation, I feel like really holds up very well. And like I said, I think it goes back to the fact that the shows are based off of aspects that are happening in real life. So it's not just something that they just pulled out of a hat. It's like, hey, this is happening now. Let's take what's happening today and move it to the 24th century.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think what I think I would say, like, kind of like, at least when I was watching it, what was really compelling is that one, I feel like it really is an ensemble cast.
Oh, yes.
And so, like, for example, like, what's interesting about those two, like, about Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, is that, if we're just using character names, Jean-Luc Picard to the captain, he's actually not really holding much in the episodes. It's really, you're looking at and you're seeing the development of his number one, Riker. You're seeing what happens kind of when a new kind of like very ambitious woman comes in and is like, I want your position. And you're seeing, Whoopi Goldberg, Guinan's character. Like, I feel like you can kind of see how they all work together.
Yeah.
And they're all really sharing the stage in a way that's authentic, and they all have chemistry, and because like they have their roles set, but no one is hogging up screen time. So it's kind of like you can see an episode where like the captain doesn't really. I mean, there's only like in that, what is it, Best of Both Worlds Part 1. Captain Jean-Luc Picard is only in it for a couple of shots. But the show, it doesn't matter. It's still really good because you're engrossed in the storyline and you're like, oh, there's the Borg, but there's this very ambitious, Shelby who is, eyeing the plot there. And, like, I just felt like I was really impressed. That was one thing that to me made the show hold up really well.
Oh, yeah.
And the other one is that I think the storylines, they're just interesting because I think you could have storylines that pull from real world events, but it can be boring as shit. But I think what they do is they take things like there's this very aggressive, and actually it's surprising because the Borg I'm gonna take that back. I don't think they're aggressive, but there's this alien race that thinks that they have the answer to improve everything. And it's like, how do you address that? Like, how do you address an enemy that is not, like, we want your power, we want your resources, but they're just like, no, you're irrelevant to us until we can, like, basically make you a part of us.
Yeah, I always kind of saw the Borg as, like, the colonists who, like, came into, like, different countries, and instead of wanting to kind of learn from the culture, it was like, no, we want to mold you into what we believe is perfection. We saw that in, like, when the British would conquer indigenous islands, and the first thing they would do is convert them to Christianity, make them dress in Western clothes. Even though it would be hot out there and humid, it was like, oh, if you're, fully dressed, that means you're not primitive. You're not a savage. We also saw that when they came to the Americas, how they treated the Native Americans. That's why I always saw the Borg as. How they say, like, resistance is futile. We're here to better you. But by quote unquote bettering them, it's like removing everything that makes you an individual and just makes you like this mindless drone.
See, that's interesting because I think one of the things I wondered about when I was watching the Borg, because one of the things that they talk about with the Borg being that they're interdependent, right? So like, there is no one single Borg. They are all one. They are collective. And I remember thinking like, like this is still in the time where, depending on like what year, and I can't remember the year of season 3 of Next Generation, but it's either like we're coming right out of the Cold War or we're still very much in like the Cold War USSR. I was always wondering, like, is it an analogy for like communism, in the sense that that's one of the tenets of communism is that we are all, nobody is better than anybody else. We are all equal. We are all sharing everything. Because I remember thinking, it's hard, right? Because with the Borg, because I remember thinking on one hand, I was like, to me, there is something beautiful about the idea of like, we are all together, we are interdependent, and we are all connected. And in some ways, I think there are failings around, I think the fact that like, because we're all different, it can create a lot of creativity, but it can also create a lot of discrimination and like prejudice and, you know, who has what and who has more. And with the Borg, you don't see that. Like nobody's arguing over this one has more than me because we're all the same.
Right.
So I guess, I don't know, like, right? Like I remember thinking like, if this is about like communism or socialism, like I can, not that I'm out here talking about resistance is futile and I need to be a part of the Borg race or some shit like that, but I could just see some of what they were talking about. Like I was like, oh yeah, I can understand why you would think that. But I think what bothers me is that the Borg have like no emotion.
And that's what I was about to say. The thing with their message of like, we are all one, we're just one big collective. On the surface, it sounds good because then you don't have the discrimination or judging people based off of money, race, sex, whatnot. However, when you look deeper in there, it's like all your individuality is gone. It's like there's nothing that makes you unique. It's like you're just the same. And that's why I say like they're like mindless drones. Because you think about how in the episode when they're trying to take them out of the warp drive and they shoot the little triangles, it's like they just step out and just walk towards them like a zombie, you know. And they're getting killed. Like, no, none of them are being like, hold up, I'm not about to get shot. It was like, oh, we're going to keep continuing because they're the enemy. Until, you know, they adapt. So it's like looking at the deeper level of, wow, you know, they talk about bettering people, but in actuality, it's like you're just becoming a zombie, just a mindless zombie.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, and this is where it's like, this is where I would agree with you that I think Star Trek poses these very deep questions for you to think about, right? Where it's like depending on like the ultimate end goal of what we want, and it's totally philosophical, right? Like if the end goal of what you want is, for example, like preservation of the human race, then honestly, like the Borg could be a great way to just preserve like a human being, right? But the problem and the challenge is, like you just said, there is no individuality, there is no emotion, there is nothing other than just being this like, in some ways, very mindless robot.
Right.
Which is also like, we watched a bunch of horror films in October, and I mean, the Borg in some ways almost feel a little like Michael Myers meets Jason. Because they're just so, right? There's like this, like, we are coming for you, we are one, we do not care. Like, that same mindless, not mindless, but that same one kind of like, this is our view, this is our drive. Which, so to me, it makes them like a perfect foil for the Enterprise and, as you kind of talked about, the larger Federation.
Yeah, it is, because they're like complete opposite.
Yes. So, I mean, I think that is one thing, like I said, I was very impressed by. And what did you think so I had two questions for you. One's about Guinan, but I'm going to start with Shelby. What did you think about Shelby?
Oh my goodness, I was about to ask you what you thought about Shelby.
Girl, you know I got thoughts about Shelby. I can tell you my thoughts about Shelby.
Okay, you know, Shelby, I feel like we've all run into that person who thinks that you're like gunning for their position. Like, we've all run into the Shelby. I know I have. I've actually been on both sides. I've had it where people thought that I was gunning for their position, and I'm like, no, I'm really not. I'm just here to learn. But they felt like I was gunning for their position. And then I've also been in a situation where it's having somebody who's a newbie coming in and being like, oh, like, why is Vanessa getting all this and all that? Like, I feel like I can do the job a whole lot better than her. But I always find it so interesting how the same people who are like, I can do it better, like how Shelby was like, you know, you don't take risks, you know, you need to move over, you need to let somebody basically younger and more gung-ho take over. When, excuse my French, everybody, but when the shit hits the fan, you saw Riker take control right then and there, and Shelby was like, we need to contact Starfleet Command. And Riker was like, no, we don't have time for that. This is our only chance. This is when, so Picard has already been captured. He's been altered into a Borg. He's basically speaking for the Borg and saying, you're about to be assimilated. The Enterprise has created this weapon that will destroy the cube. And in doing so, would also destroy Picard. Shelby was like, we need to get Starfleet Command on because you're about to kill Picard. And Riker is like, nah, this is our only chance. You know, love you, Picard, but I got to protect the ship. And so for me, I always felt like with Shelby, it's like she talks a good talk, but she can't walk it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like she says all the right things, but again, excuse my French, when the shit hit the fan, she like kind of pulls back and is like, oh, we need to do the safe route. And Riker, who has the experience, is like, no, this is our only chance.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so yeah, I'll pick it up here too, because I think one thing is that I will say is that, yes, we've all run into a Shelby. It's funny because I think you're right. Like, I've definitely been the Shelby where I've been like, no, I can do your job better than you. Like, I know I can.
Ooh, Chanel.
Well, right. And then I've also been on the other end of it where I've been like, I've had the Shelbys coming for me, and you're just like, oh my God, like, I can't. So I thought what was interesting was that, one, I thought it was funny because, and I think one of the things that I will say that I really appreciate about Star Trek was that there's a ton of diversity, a shit ton of diversity. So to have this kind of woman saying, no, like, I want to step up, I want to be number one, and eventually I want to be captain. So like, so one, it's like, I love the ambition, and I loved that both the Admiral and you saw it from, Jean-Luc, both of them admired and respected that, like, ambition and that risk taking. And like Jean-Luc says, like, that reminds me of a certain first officer that I once hired. So it's funny, right? Because it's like, because I feel like, normally, like, as a woman, when we display that kind of ambition, we can be like, basically, for lack of better words, looked at as like a bitch or something. But I felt like both of her higher ups thought like, wow, like, they were just impressed by the level of like dedication and ambition that she had. I think for those of us who've been in the Riker position, it's annoying because you're like, she's making basically assumptions about who he is because he hasn't moved up. And I think what I thought was cool was that by the end of the episodes, she understands, wow, like, there's not just enough to be able to check the boxes, as you were saying, like, I can do this, and this. But it's almost like, to be able to be a captain, it means that, like, you are responsible for this, not just the ship, the people, like, like, there's all these bigger pieces to it. And so I think she realized, like, wow, there's a ton of experience that needs to, like, that's part of what being number one is learning that. So it was kind of cool to see her at the end have such respect and admiration for Riker, and understanding that, like, if he wanted to, he could at any point, run the captain and be that captain. But, like, he's making a choice because he wants to, like, love what he does. So it's not like he needs to be that ambitious. It's like, I'm fine. He found the right place to be and the right job that gives him joy. And that's what he's prioritizing over ambition. And I thought that was, like, to me, what was dope, and that hopefully she learned.
I agree. And I just said one of my favorite scenes in these episodes was when Riker was talking to Deanna, who's the ship's counselor. And he's like, what am I still doing here? Shelby is basically like the younger version of me, but it's like everybody seems to hold on this pedestal. And I like how Deanna was saying, you have the advantage of age and season. Like, you went through all these experiences. So now it's like you're using that experience to protect the people on the ship. And like you said, that's the goal, is to protect the people on the ship. You have to make those decisions, those hard decisions to protect the people. And that was something that Shelby didn't realize. Like you said, she was looking at more like checking off all the right boxes, saying all the right things. But she never really, it never crossed her mind that, oh, as first officer, you know, I'm going to be in the position to take over the ship if something happens to the captain. My priority is not to save the captain, but to save the people on the ship.
Girl, why you slow it down? I felt like you were talking to Shelby right there. You were like, Shelby, I'm going to walk you through this shit right now. Let me slow it down and make sure to emphasize.
Like you said, it's true though. It's true. Like you saw that. I feel like you saw that the wheels turning in her head, that shift when Picard was taken and Riker was like, I'm about to destroy the cube. You kind of saw her giving him the side eye of like, but it's the captain. And then you kind of see her shifting to being like, okay, there's more to like second in command than just, you know, rubbing elbows with the captain and the admiral.
Word. That is so true. I mean, I think that's definitely right. And I think, and that's the thing with people that I think are under you and whatever you're doing, it's like, there's almost like a brilliance to being young, but there's also such a high arrogance. Like because I still encounter this. Like, you know, I feel like with my parents, okay, it's our parents. So our parents today, like I constantly have to check myself now because I realize that I'm like, you know, our parents have been through so much and everything that I think that I'm going through that they haven't been through, I've just learned like, you know what? Y'all have already gone through this shit. So like, let me slow my roll, slow it down and learn because you have all that experience. And I think it takes moments like that where you're like, oh shit, like the captain's about to die. Huh. I'm not ready to make that call yet, but he is. Okay. Like, you know, and I think you're right. And I think it's the same thing with, you know, my parents, where I've been like, our parents, where I've been like, oh, wow, you guys totally handled that. I wasn't ready to handle that decision yet. All right. Let me slow myself down and listen to your wisdom because I'm not there yet.
Yeah. And that's what comes with age. Because, you know, I remember, you know, being like a little 14-year-old and be like, oh, my goodness, our parents don't know anything. Like, why can't actually, I'm going to use the best example. Best example I have is I remember in middle school, you know, they have the middle school dances. And I wanted to go to one of the middle school dances. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was like back to school dance or like the first school dance or something like that. And I wanted to go. Dad said no. He was like, if you go to the middle school dance, what do you have to look forward to in high school? And I wanted to say going to more dances, but I did not say that because, you know, Deacon Fletcher believed in the belt. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. So I said that in my head. So I didn't go to any middle school dances because of that. But being older, I appreciate it because for me, like the people who went to the middle school dances, and if you went to middle school dances, you know, that's fine and dandy. But I just kind of feel as if when you get into high school, the excitement of the dance, it kind of goes away. Like there's no excitement. It's just like, oh, whatever, you know. And I appreciate it because when I went to the senior prom, it was exciting for me because it was like actually senior prom and homecoming. When I went to those two dances, it was exciting. And I still remember them because it was like this experience I have of like, wow, going to a dance, feeling grown up, you know, looking cute and everything. And I appreciate that. And I feel like if I had went to the middle school dances, I would not have that same type of excitement that I did for high school. And I probably wouldn't have those memories. So all that to say is, you know, parents, they know what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about.
Exactly. Like, I think that that's the thing. And whatever example, like, you know, like whatever example you have, I think we all have that case where, yeah, like Like, you think your parents don't know and they don't get it. Because I know I've been through, like, a shit ton of, like, breakups and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my mom and dad have always had really good advice about, like, it's just, like, it's not the end of the world. Like, you're gonna, you know what I mean? It's like when you're breaking up with somebody, it feels like that until you meet the next dude. And now that I'm, like, in my certain age, which we're not talking about the age because we don't discuss age, I would just say that, yeah, I feel that. I'm like, when Felix is like, oh my God, blah, 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 and I aren't friends today. And I was like, I bet tomorrow you'll all be friends again. And look, he comes home and we're like, you were right. We're all friends. And I'm not trying to simplify shit, but I just want to say that, like, yes, like, experience does matter. I think the other interesting thing, this is my other question. So when Guinan comes in to Captain Riker's office, and she goes, did Picard ever tell you why we were so close? And Riker was like, no. And she goes, well, we were more than family, more than friends. I was like, whoop, what were y'all? Were y'all getting down? That was my question, because you could definitely see she was like, I'm used to having the captain's ear. And I was like,
yeah.
What is that, girl? What is it? Spill the tea, Guinan.
You know what? I was like, I bet you should never going to pick up on that Ebony and Ivory.
Although, is that song super whack? That song is so whack. I listened to it, and I was like, this song is not good. But yes, I was also picking up on that Ebony and Ivory. What is it?
Okay. I, in my opinion, I don't believe that Picard and Guinan hooked up or anything like that. I think Guinan probably found him attractive, but I don't think she saw him as like, I want to get with him. And I think when she made that comment of, our relationship extends beyond friendship, beyond family, I think she's letting Riker know that the captain trusted me as well. And as much as I love him, I'm willing to let him go because that's not him anymore. That's how I took it as. I don't think they ever hooked up. Like I said, I think I think she was attracted to him because in other episodes she's like, I like bald men, and Picard is bald. So I think there was like probably an attraction for her. But I think it's kind of like with all of us, we see a guy and we're like, oh, he's easy on the eyes. But we're not trying to step to him. Like, I'll be honest. There's quite a few good-looking men at Chamberlain and Phoenix. Quite a few. But I'm not interested in, a relationship with them. But it don't hurt to look at the menu. So I think God was probably looking at the menu, but not interested in ordering off the menu. That was my take on it.
Well, so while you were talking, I had to do a little quick Google. So there's like, we all know now, there's like a shit ton of like Wikipedias dedicated to different ones. So there's Wikipedia for Star Wars, and then there's one for like the million like Star Trek. And I think, it's interesting because both acknowledge that their relationship is deeper than friendship, deeper than family. And I think, but neither one of them have said like, this is my boyfriend, that's my girlfriend. So what I would just say is that it would be really interesting to me is if this movie, this Picard, or, this long, whatever the episodes of Picard, I would be interested in seeing if they explored that a little deeper. Because I think you're right. I don't think it had to be like romantically like, ooh, we're attached and we're partners, we're committed, we're blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think there's definitely, like, they both clearly feel something for each other. Mm-hmm. That goes beyond just like, you're my BFF. And so I would be intrigued to kind of explore that a little deeper. Also, Whoopi was looking real good. Like, I was like, okay, Whoopi, I see you. I wish she had eyebrows, but other than that, I was like, okay, Whoopi. Like, I always forget until I see like ghosts or see like, like Whoopi was looking good. I was like, okay. Whoopi. What? Or go ahead, Vanessa. You go.
What else is there? Oh, no, I was just trying to think of everything else. Like, those are the two big components that really stood out to me that I wanted to talk about in the podcast with Shelby and Guinan's conversation with Riker. Those are the two big ones for me, which we covered.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard because, you know, we're looking at 2 episodes, and this was, like you said, a show that was on for 7 seasons. But go ahead.
Oh, I do remember. So, part 2 of Best of Both Worlds, towards the end, they managed to rescue Picard from the Borg ship. Data, the android, is, you know, connected now with Picard, and they're trying to find some way to send a command to the Borg ship to, like, lower your weapons, you know, stop fighting us, something. Because now the Borg has them in a hold. Riker makes a command to Wesley to, like, basically ram the ship into the Borg cube. Basically saying, we're all going out in order to take out this Borg ship and protect Earth.
Pew, pew, pew. Shots fired.
And let me tell you something, you know, when Riker made that command, prepare for a collision course to the Borg cube, Wesley looked at him like, are you serious? And Riker's like, do it. And you saw him be like, okay. My question for you, Chanel, is, do you feel like Riker made the right call?
You know, I mean, I have to be honest. Like, I felt like, yeah, because I remember thinking in my head, it's very utilitarian, but it's like, we're going to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good of fucking humanity. Mm-hmm. And I think when you're in that role, like, that's the call that you have to make. I think in a similar vein, when you're serving on a ship like that, that's the call you have to be ready to, like, live for. So it's like Wesley's like a kid, and this is his life, and that's it. Like, so to me, what was compelling about that was just realizing, and not to make it hella political, but, like, that's what happens. Like, you know, our dad was in the military, and that was the call that he made, which was like, all right, like, if shit gets ugly, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the greater good of everybody else. And so I think for me, you know, it's one of those, it was a really well done moment of television where you're able to kind of fully capture what it means to be, you know, an employee or a person that's serving on the Enterprise. Because it's not just like, ooh, I get to explore space and I get to wear this suit and do a transporter thing and transport different planets. But it's like, if shit gets real, I'm sacrificing my life. So I don't know. That's how I took it. What did you think?
No, I thought, well, first I was like, this is why I would not want to be captain or second in command or tactical or driving the ship, because my first thought would be evacuate the ship.
Girl, you could not go out like that. What? So the rest of us got to suffer because you couldn't man up?
No, I would have been like, evacuate the ship, so everybody started evacuating.
There wouldn't have been time. There was no time.
I know, but however, all that to say is the Borg would probably start shooting at the escape pod. I mean, so I commend, you know, Riker. I think it was the best call. I'm just saying, I don't know if I could make that call. And I feel as if that really kind of, like you said, embodies, you know, people who are in these high risk jobs, like the military, police officers, firefighters. I mean, when they go answer a call, it's like in their minds, they're thinking this could be my last time on Earth.
Right.
And like I said, I take my hat off to the people in those professions, because it's a call I don't even know if I could make. I mean, to actually, when you put on your work uniform and you step outside and you get a phone call like, you need to report to this area, and the first thing you have to think about is, I might not come back. Like, this would be the last time I see my house, my spouse, my children, friends, family. I mean, he made the right call. And all that to say is, it takes somebody who understands what the priority is to make a judgment call like that.
I definitely agree. And I think the thing that I would say too, just in general with Star Trek, which I think, at least for the Next Generation, which is what I watched with you a little bit of, or I would watch it. I don't know if I said a little bit. I would watch it with you. But I think that it's in all parts of it, right? Like it takes a special type of people to kind of do that exploration. And I think we talked about it, offline. Like I was mentioning that like there's a lot of just like history of people being quote unquote explorers, but not those motherfuckers are really just colonizers and imperialists who were like out here like raping women, stealing gold, like etc. And I think what's very interesting about Star Trek is that you really are trying to discover. And one of the things that I would say, even in their interactions with the Borg, is that they don't become aggressive until the Borg are the ones that are like, we're going to assimilate you at all costs. And so there is this way where they're almost like taking this like history of the world where people are fucked up and like exploited the shit out of people and are saying, how do we do this better? Like, how do we actually be explorers and discoverers without plundering and raping? And so, I mean, that's another place where I would give a lot of kudos to Star Trek for kind of painting that picture.
Right. And let's end on a very light note, Janelle. So now that you watched Star Trek, Best of Both Worlds, Part 1 and 2, and you have an idea about the characters, I want to know, which character would you want to be?
I mean, which character do I want to be or which character do I think I'm most like?
I want to say, who would you want to be?
I always aspire to be like Guinan. I really do. Mm-hmm. That's not necessarily who I am, but that's who I would aspire to be like. You know me, so you know that's not necessarily... Like, you probably know that that's like my aspiration, but that is not necessarily my natural tendency.
No. Well, who do you think you are then?
I think I'm the most like... It would probably mostly be like Riker, actually.
I can see that, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, what about you?
Okay, so to be honest, I would want to be Deanna Troi. Because I feel like there's like, I feel like there's like this little ugly girl inside of me that wants to be the sex symbol. Deanna Troi.
Girl, stop it. I don't want to hear you say this little ugly girl because I just changed your glamour shot photo on my wedding page.
I'm just being honest. I'm keeping it 100. I'm just saying though, but I just thought, okay, like Deanna Troi, she was a ship counselor, but she was also the sex symbol. Come on, the low cut outfits, the cleavage. She was also the sex symbol. There's just a part of me that would love to be the sex symbol.
You could be the sex symbol, Vanessa. What are you talking about? Okay, fair enough. Though. That's who you'd want to be. Who do you think you're most like?
That's who I want to be. Who I'm most like? I kind of feel like I'm a mesh between Worf and Data. That's how I feel like I am.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely. Yeah, that it's a good mesh of you. Oh, that's my baby. Hold on, we're just gonna pause Ness. Yeah, it is funny because I don't feel like most people get to see the Worf side of you, but I do think of you. And actually, when we were watching the show, and Robert and I were watching the show, and I was saying, Vanessa has always been a Star Trek fan, and he was like, it makes sense to me because it's very logically based. And I was like, right? And Vanessa like is a very logical, like I would say like logical person. So, and a lot of your decisions are made by logic and rationality, which is, I would say, a direct opposite to me at times. But there's definitely this piece of you that has prizes honor and loyalty, and you yourself are a very loyal person and have like a well of emotions. And so I would always say, for me, people always be like, oh, Chanel, I'm like, nah, The person y'all need to watch out for is Vanessa, because run Vanessa the wrong way and she will fuck you all the way up. Like, real talk. That is the truth, too. So I'm letting all y'all know on this podcast, step sideways with Vanessa, you will find out. Which is also very true to Worf.
Also, let's just say real quick, though, Worf is a sweetheart, too.
He is.
He might have this gruff nature on the outside, but he's an absolute sweetheart. So some people might see me as being mean, but I'm really a sweetheart. Okay. Well, Chanel, I think we done covered Star Trek. I think it's time for us to wrap it up, girl.
Let's do it. Thank you, Vanessa, for letting us talk about one of your favorite shows. Like I said, for me,
yes,
I really enjoyed it, and it completely holds up. I'm surprised that they haven't put this in HD yet. So shout out, like, Paramount, whoever the hell
they
owns.
have.
No, the Star Trek Next Generation. When I watched it on Hulu, girl, it was straight up standard definition.
They have it on Blu-ray in HD.
Well, Hulu, you need to get with the program, because that was not HD what I watched at all. So we're going to wrap us up. We will be back on next week. Next week is Thanksgiving, girl. That just hit me. So stay tuned for our kind of holiday-themed episode. We're working on that. We've got some surprises. We'll share that with you guys soon. I will say thank you again for stopping by and sipping with us. Make sure to leave us a review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and let your friends know they can find us on Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are served. Vanessa, we out.
Boom.
Mic drop.
This was a Holler FM podcast.
And I think we're done.